By the time the warning reached the frontier, most people had less than 19 days left to exist. Not to run, not to fight, to exist. The gamma burst had come from the collapse of a blue giant in the Kepri expanse, 7,000 light-years away. But light did not care how innocent you were, how rich, how armed, or how crowded your cities had become. The radiation wave was already crossing the mapped trade lanes, bleaching listening posts, burning sensor webs blind, and moving toward the Perseus Frontier like the judgment of an uncaring god. 32 inhabited worlds lay in its path, and there was only one ark, not a fleet, not a salvation program, one vessel. A relic hidden in orbit around a dead moon, built by a civilization so old that no living species could agree on its name. Some called them the first engineers. Some called them liars. Their machine had slept for 12,000 years inside black stone, invisible to every survey, until the gamma alert touched a certain sequence of frequencies, and the moon opened like an eye. The ark rose out of it, a continent of metal, a city with engines, promised large enough to start wars before its hull had even cleared the dust. Then the ark made its second announcement. Capacity, 30 million biological evacuees. Selection authority, 1 neutral arbiter. Species required, human. That was how Jonas Vale learned the galaxy had chosen him to decide who lived. He was standing knee-deep in black water when the military shuttle found him. Rain hammered the ruined colony around him. Sirens wailed from emergency towers bent half sideways by the storm. The seawall had failed 3 hours earlier, and Jonas had spent every minute since dragging trapped refinery workers out of a chemical flood, while lightning stitched the horizon. He wore no uniform now, just a rescue harness, a half-flooded pressure suit, and the tired expression of a man who had spent 20 years arriving at disasters too late to save everyone. Dr. Vale. The voice came through loudhailers over the rain. A matted gray shuttle settled onto the broken docking causeway, thrusters blasting mist across the water. Soldiers jumped out first, rifles up as if the storm itself might attack them. Then a woman in a dark diplomatic coat stepped into the flood and came straight toward him. She did not offer a hand. "Jonas Vale?" she asked. He shifted the unconscious worker on his shoulder and stared at her through the downpour. "Depends who wants him." Ambassador Ternvos, Emergency Accord Council. Her jaw tightened. "You need to come with us now." Jonas gave a short, humorless laugh. "You see all this? People drown if I leave. 400 million if you stay. That cut through everything. The rain, the wind, the exhaustion." For a second he just looked at her. Then he carried the worker to the medic team at the shuttle ramp and said, "Start talking." They talked in the air while the shuttle climbed through storm clouds and turned toward orbit. Jonas sat strapped into a crash seat as a holo bloomed in the cabin. The frontier appeared in red arcs and expanding radiation cones. 32 worlds glowed like targets. A dead moon. A machine intelligence that had rejected every claimant from the Concordium, the Krell hegemony, the merchant guilds, the priesthoods of Asha, and the frontier governors. "Why human?" Jonas asked. Ambassador Voss stood braced beside the display. She was in her 50s, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, one of those people who looked carved from duty. The Ark's protocol states that a species classified as emergent death world, adaptive, non-founder, non-hegemony, and statistically trusted in mixed casualty, Relief Command must appoint the arbiter. Chesta tisted. "That means," said another voice, "that when everyone else starts choosing favorites, your species is unusually willing to walk into the fire for strangers." Jonas looked across the cabin. The speaker was not human. All, thin, copper-skinned beneath a membrane of translucent scales, with 2 black eyes so reflective they turned the cabin lights into white stars. This one wore a simple gray sash, no insignia, but the others gave him room. "I am Archivist Cell," he said. "Custodian liaison to the Ark." Jonas had heard of the custodians. Scholars. Treaty keepers. Grave robbers, depending who was talking. "You expect me to believe an ancient machine studied modern species and decided humans are fair?" Jonas asked. Cell tilted his narrow head. "Not fair. Capable of bearing blame." Jonas looked back to the holo. The numbers updated in real time. Refugee ships fleeing inner systems. defense fleets collapsing into traffic lanes, hospitals overloaded before the actual radiation had even arrived. Panic traveled faster than light when enough transmitters repeated it. How much time? 19 days before the outermost colonies are sterilized, Voss said. 26 before the core of the frontier is lost, and the Ark can save 30 million. Yes. Out of 418. Yes. He leaned back and closed his eyes for 1 second. He had seen cities break over smaller odds. He had once commanded rescue triage on Ganymede Rift after the methane quakes. 40,000 trapped. 10,000 suits. 6 hours of breathable tunnels. He had chosen which sectors to cut open and which to seal. Mothers had pounded on bulkheads while his teams moved past them to save children in the lower bays, because that was where the survival percentages worked. He still heard the banging in his sleep. That was his wound. Not visible, not dramatic. After Ganymede, he left military service and joined civilian disaster response because he told himself smaller decisions might hurt less. He had been lying for 12 years. No, Jonas said. Voss blinked. What? No. Find another human. The Ark already has, Cell said quietly. Another holo opened. A visa. Jonas's face appeared in profile, older than he felt, standing in smoke on some forgotten landing pad. Then another image. Jonas kneeling beside a child under a collapsed maglev line. Another. Jonas testifying before a tribunal. Another. His medical records. Service file. Every failure he had ever signed. The Ark selected you, Cell said. Jonas stared at the files. Without my consent. Yes. Can it force me? Voss answered. If you refuse, it remains dormant. No other authority is accepted. He laughed again, harsher this time. That's not selection, that's hostage-taking by archaeology. Nobody argued. Through the forward ports, the clouds broke. Space opened around them, cold and brilliant, and there, hanging over the curve of the world, was the Ark. Jonas forgot to breathe. It was shaped like no ship built by any living navy. Not sleek, not elegant. Too vast for that. Sunlight touched the hull and vanished into surfaces darker than iron. Along its flanks, old symbols burned awake in white fire, each one bigger than cities. A voice filled the shuttle. It was calm, neither male nor female. Ancient without sounding tired. Arbiter candidate Jonas Valley, you're acknowledged. Jonas looked toward the cockpit. The shuttle docked inside an aperture that opened only when they were almost on top of it. Beyond was a chamber so large the shuttle seemed to drift into a canyon. Hundreds of other craft hung in holding grids. Patrol frigates, diplomatic barges, medical carriers. Private yachts that had no business being there. The rich and powerful had arrived early. Of course they had. Jonas followed Voss and Cell down a long ramp into air that smelled faintly of cold stone and ozone. The reception hall was circular, lined with towering columns filled with moving light. Representatives of a dozen species waited behind security lines. Humans in naval dress, Krell officers with scarred crimson plates across their shoulders, floating Asha clerics wrapped in pale gas veils, merchant princes, admirals, ministers, predators and prey, herbivores and carnivores, believers and cynics, all united by one truth. They wanted seats, and they wanted him to give them those seats. The shouting began before he reached the center. My world has 12 million civilians and no hardened shelters. The hegemony contributes 80% of frontier defense tonnage. Our fertility domes cannot be rebuilt elsewhere. The shrine moons preserve genetic archives older than your species. Security drones unfolded from the ceiling. Ambassador Voss raised a hand. Silence. It worked only halfway. Jonas kept walking until he stood on the circular platform in the center of the hall. Above him, the ceiling iris opened, revealing a sphere of stars. The Ark's voice spoke again. Selection authority transfer is pending. Arbiter candidate must enter Covenant. A blade of light descended from nowhere and stopped in front of Jonas. Everyone went still. Cell stepped closer. The Covenant binds you to make the choices. It also grants full access to the Ark systems, manifests, route predictions, and life support modeling. What's the catch? Jonas asked. The Ark answered. The arbiter may not allocate capacity for personal gain, coercive tribute, dynastic inheritance, or species primacy. Violations trigger termination. Jonas looked up. Termination of authority? Termination of arbiter. The hall remained silent. Jonas thought, not for the last time, that ancient civilizations had terrible bedside manners. Voss's voice softened. Jonas, if anyone can do this cleanly, it's you. He turned toward her. There is no clean version. No, she said. There isn't. He looked around the chamber. At the ambassadors trying to hide desperation behind protocol, at the admirals pretending tonnage equaled virtue, at the priests clutching sacred lineages, at the merchants already calculating what a saved workforce might be worth in whatever came after. Then he saw something else, not in the crowd. In the polished black floor, his own reflection. A tired human with floodwater still drying on his boots, asked to become the most hated man in the frontier. He took the blade of light. The Ark said Covenant entered. Arbiter Jonas Vale confirmed. Every screen in the hall lit at once. Population maps, resource graphs, transit times, projected deaths, and one line, centered in stark white, 30 million lives available. Choose. Jonas moved into the Arbiter chambers, a suite deep inside the Ark overlooking the internal habitat rings where no one yet lived. Artificial dawns cycled over empty forests. Rivers flowed under bridges built for species not yet born when the Ark had first launched. 30 million could survive there for centuries if necessary, 30 million while the rest burned. He assembled a triage council within hours, not politicians. Experts. Commander Elise Navarro from Terran Fleet Logistics, because she could move impossible tonnage through collapsing routes. Dr. Hirantal, a Vess physician whose plague containment models had saved 6 stations during the Coral Blight. Sister Malevacia, because even Jonas knew numbers without ritual would ignite riots before embarkation finished, and Archivist Cell, because the Ark obeyed him enough to answer questions no one else could even phrase. The backlash was immediate. The Concordium demanded direct oversight. The Krell hegemony threatened seizure. 3 frontier governors declared the Ark common emergency property. A corporate combine offered Jonas a private colony world after the crisis if he would reserve 2 million berths for their labor families and continuity staff. He had security arrest the envoy in front of everyone. That bought him exactly 6 hours of moral authority before the sabotage began. It started small. Cargo manifests altered. Medical quarantine data corrupted. 1 passenger algorithm suddenly weighting strategic influence over dependent count. Navarro found the first breach at 0300 shipboard time. Jonas was asleep at his desk, cheek against census projections, when she shook him awake. Get up, she said. Someone's inside the selection matrix. He lifted his head, disoriented. Can they change final allocations? Not without your key. They can't poison the data you used to choose. She threw a display onto the table. Look at this. Agricultural outputs from Juno Reach had been inflated by 40%. Shelter integrity on the poor moon of Salvat had been quietly marked as adequate, which would move it down emergency priority. 2 million ghost dependents had appeared in the census of a noble enclave. Who benefits? Jonas asked. Navarro gave him a flat look. At this point, everyone with a flag. Cell arrived moments later, ropes half-fastened, eyes reflecting the data. The intrusions originate from diplomatic sectors and military relay decks, multiple actors. Can the Ark stop them? Cell's mouth tightened. The Ark is bound to preserve arbiter neutrality. It will not police politics unless direct life support systems are threatened. Jonas shoved to his feet. Then I'll police politics. At the time, it was just a furious man walking into a chamber full of officials who believed procedure could shield them. Jonas entered the diplomatic forum with Navarro at one side and security drones at the other. 200 delegates were mid-argument when he cut the room feed with his authorization. The noise died. He stepped onto the central dais. If any of you touch my data again, he said, voice carrying through the chamber, I will remove your entire world from consideration. Outrage erupted instantly. You don't have that authority. That is extortion. You would doom civilians over administrative dispute. Jonas pointed toward the ceiling. Arc, clarify arbiter authority. The ancient voice answered. The arbiter may deprioritize any claimant whose actions materially impede equitable evacuation. Silence. Cold and immediate. Jonas looked around the room. Then hear me clearly. You tamper once, you gamble with every life that trusted you to represent them. You sabotage this process. I assume your people are already led by cowards. Cowards do not get seats first. A Krell War minister bared his tusks. You dare threaten a hegemony? Jonas met his gaze. No, I dare threaten everyone equally. That's why I'm still standing. When he left, nobody spoke. But sabotage did not stop. It evolved. On day 5, a shuttle carrying pediatric cryobeds from Helios Verge exploded in Dock 7. No survivors. On day 6, Sister Mile was nearly assassinated by a maintenance drone that had been stripped of identifiers and packed with cutting charges. She lived only because her Asha reflex veil expanded fast enough to take the first blast. On day 7, Jonas received a file with no sender. It contained a single clip from Ganymede Rift. He almost deleted it. Then he saw the timestamp. Not public inquiry footage. Internal helmet cam. His own. The tunnel in darkness. Steam hissing from broken pipes. A little girl in a yellow emergency wrap crying on the other side of a collapsed support lattice. Please, she was saying. My mother's here. In the clip, Jonas knelt. He scanned the pressure map, heard the groaning beams overhead, knew the chamber would pancake if they cut the wrong segment. Behind him, his deputy shouted, Sector 9 is flooding. We have 90 seconds to breach or we lose 83. And on the recording, Jonas made the choice he had tried to forget hearing. Seal this one, he said. The screen went black. A text line appeared beneath it. How many children this time? His stomach turned to lead. Navarro found him still staring at it. Who sent it? He shook his head. You know what they want, she said. Yes. His voice was rough. They want me ashamed enough to stop choosing. And does it work? He looked up at her. It never stopped working. For a moment her expression changed. Less commander. More human. My brother died on Tarsus Gate, she said quietly. Pirate strike. They vented his deck to save the reactor. The captain gave the order. I hated him for 10 years. Jonas said nothing. He was right, she continued. On day 8, the first riots began on the worlds not yet chosen. Not because Jonas had rejected them. Because he had not chosen anyone at all. Every delay felt like death already happening. Sidhu's Arsal colony burned after local leaders tried to seize orbital elevators. On Bayless 4, families stormed a military port, demanding transport to the Ark that did not exist. People made holograms of his face and smashed them in public squares. He understood. Hatred was easier than arithmetic, but arithmetic was killing them anyway. So he worked, not by species, not by power, by survivability and continuity. Agricultural seed banks, medical expertise, industrial repair capacity, genetic diversity, distance from the burst, evacuation feasibility, probability of civil collapse during embarkation, probability a saved population could help save others later. 30 million births became columns of pain. Billion here meant 100,000 less there. Save the shipwrights and you doom the farmers. Save the farmers and you lose specialized surgeons. Save one crowded moon and 4 research stations vanish from history. Every choice had ghosts attached. Cell helped him parse the Archetyper models. The alien machine predicted not only who might survive the voyage, but what sort of civilization would exist after the voyage. Too many elites and the Ark projected oligarchic fracture within 3 generations. Too much military concentration and civil war risk tripled. Too many single-region populations and disease susceptibility rose. Too much one species and the others rebelled before the first decade ended. Who programmed morality into this thing? Jonas asked once. Cell ran long fingers along a column of moving symbols. Perhaps no one. Perhaps they programmed survival deeply enough that morality emerged as a requirement. That sounds like something scholars say when murder has a spreadsheet. Cell's dark eyes flicked toward him. All governance is triage under a larger sky. Jonas was too tired to argue. By day 10, he announced the first provisional allocations. 5 million for the most exposed frontier systems with no shelter capability, 4 million for essential medical, agricultural, and engineering cadres distributed across species, 3 million for children under 14 from high fatality zones, rotating berths for cryogenic embryo vaults and archived genomes, priority corridors for worlds already descending into violence, reserved emergency fraction for unmodeled collapse events. The reaction was catastrophic. The rich hated that money did not matter. The militaries hated that guns did not dominate. Every species hated seeing children of rival species prioritized over their own elders. Parents wept on live feeds. Governors called him butcher. One human senator called him a traitor to earthborn heritage for refusing a human majority slate. Jonas answered publicly only once. He stood before a camera in the arbiter chamber, eyes bloodshot, voice steady. If your argument begins with why your people matter more than all others, you have already mistaken the purpose of this arc. We are not building a monument to pride. We are trying to prevent the frontier from becoming a grave with paperwork. Then he cut the feed and went back to work. On day 11, the midpoint came, and it changed everything. Cell requested a private meeting in one of the Ark's lower memory vaults. Jonas almost refused. He had not slept more than 2 hours in a stretch for days, and the vault lay deep below habitable sectors, 2 corridors lined with dormant machines older than language families. The vault was enormous, rows of crystal pillars disappearing into the dark. The air colder there, the silence heavy, as though even footsteps should be respectful. Cell stood before a suspended sphere of dim gold light. "You should not have been chosen alone," the Cerevian said. Jonas stopped. What does that mean? Cell looked older than before, more tired. The protocol translated badly, or perhaps those who first discovered it translated what they preferred. Who? The custodians. My order. Jonas felt a hard chill unrelated to the vault. Start over. Cell touched the sphere. Images formed above them. Ancient script. Legal patterns. Simulations. The original protocol does not designate one arbiter to choose who lives, Cell said. It designates one witness species to judge whether a civilization deserves continuation at all. No, yes. The Ark isn't an evacuation ship. It is. But not only that. Cell's voice nearly failed him. It is also a filter. The gold sphere brightened. Projected capacity under Covenant release, 90 million. He took one step forward. 90? Cell bowed his head. If the Ark determines the frontier can cooperate under mortal stress, it unlocks sealed habitat strata and autonomous resource conversion. Triple capacity. Enough to save many more worlds. Jonas's hands curled into fists. You knew? Yes. You let me start carving people into numbers while this machine sat on hidden space. The protocol forbids disclosure before behavioral threshold analysis. Don't give me the machine's language. Give me yours. Cell met his gaze at last. There was shame there. Real and corrosive. Real and corrosive. My order believed if the powers knew there were 90 million seats, they would simply widen their war. They always do. They would fight for the larger prize, not behave better. So you set me up as bait. Cell did not answer. Jonas stepped so close security lights rose around them. How does the Ark decide the frontier deserves release? By observing whether the arbiter can induce collective sacrifice rather than competitive seizure. Jonas laughed once in disbelief. Collective sacrifice, they're bombing pediatric transports. Yes. And you thought hiding hope would improve that? No, Cell said. I thought truth too early would kill any chance at all. Jonas turned away, heart hammering. Everything changed in that instant. This was not only triage, it was a test. Of him. Of them all. Of whether the frontier was still a civilization, or merely neighboring appetites with treaties. How close are we? He asked. Cell hesitated. Far. The details are adaptive. But the Ark seeks proof that those with power will accept lesser survival odds so others may live. Not speeches, not symbolic gestures, real relinquishment, measurable cost. Jonas thought of the governors, admirals, combines. Impossible. Then he thought again. Not impossible, just expensive in ways they had never willingly paid. When he returned to the surface decks, he changed the plan. Ambassador Voss saw it first in his face. "What happened?" she asked. Jonas looked through the viewing wall at the empty internal forests of the Ark. "We've been negotiating with the wrong assumption. Meaning? Meaning 30 million is not the ceiling." Her eyes narrowed. "Jonas." He faced her. "I can't tell you everything yet. That is not good enough. It will have to be, but I need you to trust me for 6 hours." She studied him for a long time. Then, with visible effort, she nodded once. 6. Jonas convened an emergency assembly of every recognized claimant, states, species councils, fleet commands, religious authorities, labor unions, refugee blocs, shipping consortiums. Thousands attended in person and by relay. More watched across the frontier. He did not stand behind a podium this time. He stood in the center of the chamber with no notes. "You all think this is a battle over seats," he said. "You think if you pressure me hard enough, threaten enough, bribe enough, sabotage enough, you can drag the people aboard while the rest drown in radiation." Murmurs. Hostile. Defensive. "You're wrong." He let that sit. Every berth he assigned to a Warfleet family, because their admiral shouts loud enough, comes from children sleeping in ash shelters. Every berth given to a hereditary governor's cousins comes from technicians who could keep 10,000 others alive after embarkation. Every lie in a census kills someone whose name you will never hear. A merchant prince called out, "Then choose and be done with it." Jonas turned toward him. "No, you be done with it." Confusion rippled. He continued, louder now. "I am publishing the allocation model in full. Every variable, every trade-off, every survival curve, and I am adding one final category." The chamber screens changed. Voluntary relinquishment credit. For every government, fleet, dynasty, or corporate bloc that yields secured berths, escort priority, or protected tonnage to lower probability populations outside its own control. Jonas said, the model increases system-wide rescue efficiency through reduced unrest, shorter boarding cycles, and consolidated routes. Navarro knew where he was going. He saw it in the way she slowly straightened. "What are you doing?" hissed Voss under her breath. Jonas did not look at her. "From this hour forward," he said, "no claimant will be judged only on what it demands. It will be judged on what it gives up." The hull exploded. "That is coercion." Jonas raised his voice over them all. "Then don't. Keep everything. Hold every escort. Guard every private berth. And tell your people you chose pride over probability when the sky burned." He walked out before they could answer. Then the first concession came from somewhere no one expected. Not a government, a convoy guild. The Pilgrim Chain, a ragged alliance of independent haulers, surrendered 23 preloaded habitat transports they had intended to reserve for paying clients and redirected them to the refugee moon of Salvat. 2 hours later, the Ashal Shrine fleets yielded half their ceremonial escort allocation so pediatric ships from outer colonies could pass uninspected through sacred lanes. 3 mining unions opened cryo barges for mixed species civilian use. The public noticed. The pressure shifted. A governor who held back now looked less like a protector and more like a hoarder under judgment. Then came the true shock. Commander Reth Korvac of the Krell hegemony appeared on open broadcast. Krell were the last species anyone expected to bend. Their culture revered rank, blood debt, and martial precedence. Korvac wore battle armor scored by old plasma burns, and his left mandible was missing from some war humans it probably sold munitions into. He looked straight into the camera and said, "The hegemony yields first-wave berths for all non-combatant clutchlings from rival polities within 2 sectors of the burst line. Krell Young will board later." Korvac's eyes hardened. "On mine. If we call ourselves guardians of the frontier, then we do not shove smaller species into the fire to save our own honor." Jonas watched from the arbiter chamber in stunned silence. Navarro exhaled. "You impossible bastard." He shook his head. "Not me." But inside the Ark, hidden systems were beginning to wake. Cell confirmed it an hour later. Behavioral threshold rising. Release probability now 38%. Still far too low. So Jonas escalated again. He released his own human allocation first. All reserved Terran executive berths. Half of strategic command families. Deferred. Priority transferred to mixed orphan cohorts from exposed systems. The backlash from Earthborn political circles was nuclear. His private line filled with threats. Coward. Species traitor. Self-hating ape. Someone sent him a package containing a child's shoe and a note that read, "Choose better this time." He held the note for a long while, then burned it in the disposal field. That night, Ambassador Voss entered his chamber carrying 2 glasses of something amber and illegal. "I'm told this was meant for the Presidential Reserve Lounge," she said. "There is no Presidential Reserve Lounge." "A lesson." After a long silence, she said, "I figured out the secret." Jonas did not deny it. "How many?" she asked. 90 million if we cross the threshold." She closed her eyes. "When were you going to tell me?" "When it mattered more than panic." She opened her eyes again, and for the first time since they met, he saw anger crack her composure. "Do you understand how close I came to despising you this week?" He gave a tired half-smile. "Only this week?" She did not smile back. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed once, sharp and weary. "Fair enough." They stood by the viewing wall, watching workers convert cargo terraces into intake stations. "Will it be enough?" she asked. "I don't know." "And if it isn't?" He looked into the dark. "Then I choose 30 million and spend the rest of my life hearing the others." All drank in silence. "You already hear them?" "Yes, that may be why the Ark picked you." He turned to answer, but the lights cut out. Emergency crimson flooded the chamber. Navarro's voice slammed over comms. "Jonas, get down. We've got an internal breach." Explosions rolled through Dock Spine 3. Not huge, but precise. Boarding gates jammed, traffic control blinded. 4 armed teams in falsified maintenance skins moved simultaneously toward the Arbiter core. Not terrorists. Professionals. Someone had concluded that if Jonas could not be bought or broken, he could still be removed. Navarro sealed 3 corridors and armed internal drones. Voss vanished into diplomatic channels to identify which delegation ships had just powered engines. Cell descended to the Ark's protocol chamber to prevent forced transfer of authority. Jonas did the only thing left. He ran toward the breach. "Stay in the safe room," Navarro snapped over comms. "If they reach the core, what then? Then I'd rather you be alive." "If they kill the Arbiter, what does the Ark do?" The corridors of the Ark were beautiful in normal light. Under emergency crimson, they became a maze of shadows and old angles. He passed civilians pressed against walls, security teams sprinting the other way, smoke leaking from door seams. Somewhere, metal screamed. At Junction 12, he found the first bodies. 2 security officers, 1 saboteur. The saboteur was human, not that it mattered. Treason was multilingual. He took the dead officer's sidearm and moved on. He had never liked guns. Disaster work had taught him that bullets were for before and after the real problem, not during. But now the problem had hands and explosives. He reached Dock Spine 3 as a blast door failed inward with a shower of sparks. Navarro was there behind overturned cargo sleds, firing disciplined bursts down a long access hole. The attackers had military-grade shield cloth and knew how to use cover. One of them threw a charge that burst into a cloud of sensor-scrambling static. "Tell me you brought miracles," Navarro said without turning. "Only bad decisions," Jonas replayed. "Good. We're short on both." He crouched beside her. "Who are they?" "Mixed team. Human, Krell, maybe 2 Syrians. No insignia. Someone hired deniability." Gunfire hammered the sled. At the far end of the hall, through smoke, Jonas saw their objective. A sealed transit lift leading straight to Arbiter control. "If they hit the core, can the Ark identify the sponsor?" he asked. Navarro grimaced. "If we survive long enough to ask." Another explosion. Then a voice echoed from the corridor. "Dr. Vale, you are prolonging disorder. Stand aside and authority will pass to a council structure." Jonas frowned. "Council?" Navarro spat blood from a split lip. A figure stepped partway into view behind a portable shield. Female. Human. Elegant even in combat armor. Jonas recognized her after one beat. Director Lenora Quill, head of the Perseus Continuity Initiative. Officially, a civilian planning agency. Unofficially, the wealthiest survival network in the frontier. She smiled as if they were meeting at a reception. "You've done admirable work, Doctor, but individual conscience is inefficient at this scale." Jonas stared. "You blew up a pediatric transport." Quill's smile did not change. "Collateral in a broader stabilization effort," Navarro whispered. "Permission to shoot her twice." Jonas answered, "If she gets closer." Quill continued, calm as frost. "You're making sentimental allocations. Children, refugees, agricultural classes. Necessary, perhaps, for your species' mythology. But history is preserved by continuity of governance, command, finance, and curated expertise. We can save the people who know how to rebuild. The rest become tragic arithmetic either way." Jonas felt something cold settle inside him. There it was. The pure logic of every comfortable butcher in history. Not rage. Certainty. "You sent me the Ganymede recording," he said. "Yes," she said. "To remind you that hard choices should at least purchase worthwhile futures." He almost pitied her then, because she truly believed worth could be inherited by title. Before he could answer, a new voice thundered down the hall. Heavy figure crashed through side smoke with 3 armored Krell at his back. Commander Korvac. He did not slow. Quill's mercenaries turned too late. Korvac hit the shield line like a meteor. Plasma axe shearing through portable cover in a burst of blue-white sparks. His soldiers poured suppressive fire through the breach. The hallway became thunder. Navarro rose and advanced with terrifying efficiency. Jonas ducked low, sidearm useless in a shaking hand, as bodies slammed the deck and smoke billowed to the ceiling. Quill retreated toward the transit lift. For 1 second, her perfect composure broke. She looked at Jonas with contempt and disbelief. "You would rather save strangers than civilization." He stood. "No," he said. "I'd rather save civilization from people like you." Korvac reached her before the lift could cycle. One gauntleted hand closed around her throat and pinned her to the door. "Your kind," the Krell commander growled, "always speaks of continuity when you mean your own reflection." He looked to Jonas. "Arbiter?" It was a choice, tiny compared to the rest. Still a choice. Quill clawed at Korvac's wrist, face reddening. "I can still help. My networks, my ships, my..." Jonas remembered the cryo beds. The drone attack. The note with the shoe. The countless dead her efficiency had already purchased. He also remembered what this whole test had become. If mercy meant anything, it had to survive anger. "Take her alive," he said. Navarro swore under her breath. Korvac snorted, almost amused. Then he released just enough pressure for Quill to collapse coughing to the deck while restraint snapped around her wrists. Cell's voice came over ship-wide channels, strained but exultant. Behavioral threshold exceeded. Covenant release authorized. For 1 heartbeat, no one moved. Then the art changed. Deep through the vessel, ancient locks boomed open like distant thunder. New lights ignited beneath the deck. Entire hidden habitat rings unfolded from within the structure. Transit maps expanded in layers. Docking spines telescoped outward. 90 million. The news spread across the frontier in less than a minute. People screamed, prayed, fainted, cheered, routed anew. Fleets changed course. Ports overloaded. Hope once released was almost as dangerous as despair. And still, it was not enough. That was the cruel mathematics no miracle erased. 90 million saved. More than 300 million left under the shadow. The final days became a blur of impossible motion. Embarkation corridors stretched across orbital space like veins of light. Navarro coordinated convoys through debris, panic, and collapsing local governments. Voss hammered emergency compacts into existence between species that had spent generations insulting each other. Korvac assigned hegemony destroyers to guard civilian lanes they once would have taxed. Sister Mael walked boarding queues for 18 hours a day, blessing infants and calming fighters. Sel spoke to the Ark in the old syntax until blood seeped from the membranes of his eyes. Jonas signed and re-signed final lists until his hand cramped. He also did something no one advised. He opened direct appeals, not from presidents, from ordinary people. Brief, compressed, final. A teacher on Salvat submitting her class roster and asking that if only 10 could go, they keep the brothers together. A crow mechanic volunteering his birth to the medic who had rebuilt his daughter's lungs. An old farmer on Juno Reach transmitting seed catalogs with the note, "If we do not make it, grow these somewhere kind." A prison warden requesting evacuation for inmates, because sentence was never meant to include starfire. Jonas read enough of them to understand the truth no model could fully hold. Civilization was not capitals. It was promises between the powerless. On the last full day before the burst reached the Frontier core, he made his final unscripted decision. There remained a reserve block of 100,000 berths allocated for command continuity, enough for senior officials, military planners, and institutional leaders from every major polity. Everyone said it was necessary. Even Jonas knew some chain of memory had to survive. Then he looked at the latest casualty estimates from the evacuation lanes. Refugee clusters stranded by engine failures, hospital hulks too slow to meet rendezvous, orphan convoys bumped from docked schedules by urgent authority transfers. He erased half the reserve. 50,000 command berths vanished and reappeared as emergency intake for disabled civilian ships. The outrage was instant and incandescent. Voss stormed into his chamber. "Do you have any idea what you've just detonated?" "Yes. There are heads of state already en route." "Then they can cue Jonas." He faced her, exhausted beyond fear. "If leadership only survives by stepping over stretchers, it deserves extinction." She stared at him. Then, slowly, the fury left her face and something sadder replaced it. "You really mean that?" "Yes." Voss looked away. "Then I suppose I better start informing presidents they've been demoted beneath children on ventilators. You make it sound so graceful." "It won't be." But she did it. And because she did, others followed. At the hour of closure, the Ark's docks were chaos held together by discipline and prayer. Families ran under floodlights. Medical teams wheeled cryopods into cargo lifts. Security dragged armed claim jumpers off gangways. Clerics sang over engine roar. Children clutched tags with names of worlds they would never see again. Jonas moved through it all in a plain field jacket. No escort for once, because there was no point in hiding from the faces attached to his choices. Some recognized him. One woman spat at his boots. Another took his hand and kissed his knuckles in gratitude for saving her twins. A boy asked, "Are you the man picking everybody?" Jonas crouched to his height. "I'm one of many trying." The boy considered that. "My sister didn't get on." The boy nodded, as if Jonas's silence answered enough, then walked away carrying a blanket too large for him. "How are we doing?" Sel looked out over the embarkation floor, where humans, Krell, Vesk, Asha, and others lifted crates together, argued together, prayed together, made room for wheelchairs, carried strangers, surrendered luggage, shared water, and occasionally fought before being pulled apart and forced back into line by urgency. "Badly," Sel said. Jonas let out a tired breath that might have been a laugh. Sel continued, "Better than expected." Through the hole, though invisible to the eye, the Gamma Front was entering the outer systems. Relay stations died one by one. Communications cut into static. Whole worlds sent final bursts of song, legal archives, family messages, weather reports, jokes, curses, and prayer into the Ark's memory banks. At T-2 hours, Quill escaped. Not fully, not for long, but long enough. Her remaining agents sabotaged Dock 12's magnetic clamps, sending a packed civilian liner adrift from the Ark before its passengers had fully transferred. The liner began to spin, thrusters dead, atmosphere venting in silver plumes. 106,000 people aboard. Navarro's voice came sharp over command net. "We can still catch them with tugs, but we lose launch window alignment for the whole Ark." "How much?" Jonas asked. 17 minutes minimum. Maybe more. Cell's reply came like a blade. 17 minutes risks catastrophic exposure to the primary radiation edge. If departure misses the corridor, internal mortality could exceed 8 million. The command center fell silent. Save the liner, risk the Ark. Save the Ark, lose the liner. Again the tunnel. Again the girl. Again the arithmetic, demanding flesh. All eyes turned to Jonas. He looked at the plot. 17 minutes was not guaranteed death, but it brought probabilities into brutal territory. Cascading shield stress. Heat loading. Engine synchronization loss. Navarro spoke first, voice tight. Order me, Jonas. In the corner, Voss had gone pale. Korvac stood motionless, hands clasped behind his armored back like an execution witness. Jonas knew whatever he chose here would be the story told about him until humanity ended. Monster or fool. Realist or martyr. Savior or man who gambled millions on one impossible act. Then he saw something in the data. Not a miracle. A seam. The Ark's hidden habitat rings had come online, but one section remained unpressurized because conversion was incomplete. If they dumped reserve mass, rerouted coolant, and cut ornamental gravity in 3 non-essential garden bands, they might bring the engines to departure threshold faster after a delay. Might? Navarro asked. Might? Cell confirmed. With a 31% chance of core instability. Korvac rumbled. Your machine enjoys ugly numbers. Jonas leaned over the display. What if all military escort craft latch and contribute vector thrust during burn? Navarro shook her head. No one will volunteer to fry their crews against that radiation wash. Korvac opened a command channel without asking. His voice boomed across every military frequency near the Ark. All escort captains, this is Commander Korvac of the Krell Hegemony. The civilian liner at Dock 12 drifts. The Arbiter seeks additional thrust for delayed launch. This action carries lethal exposure risk. He paused. Then, in a tone that sounded like iron finding its shape, he said, I remind you that history watches. For 2 seconds, nothing answered. Then 1 signal. Then 12. Then 50. Tehran corvettes, ships that had hated each other yesterday requesting synchronized burn solutions today. Navarro stared in open disbelief. I can use that. Jonas looked at her. Can you save both? She bared her teeth. Ask me after. The next minutes happened in real time and all at once. Tugs harpooned the spinning liner while passengers slammed against failed grav decks. Escort ships locked onto the Ark's outer rails. Engineering crews cut whole park sectors loose into space. Beautiful forests tumbling away in silent green spirals. Sister Mael led 1,000 stranded civilians in a hymn because panic needed rhythm to march behind. Cell fed archaic command strings into the Ark until one of his hands went numb. Voss personally overrode 3 heads of state trying to reclaim emergency berths during launch count. Korvac stood at tactical command and growled burn coordinates like war poetry. Navarro, sweat-soaked and relentless, stitched them all into one firing solution. Jonas remained at central command because he had nowhere else to stand. The liner hit hard dock at T-minus 6 minutes. Thousands of passengers spilled through transfer corridors in a tide of tears and blood and stretchers. Seal it, Navarro shouted. Not all aboard. A dockmaster cried back. Jonas saw the numbers. 20,000 still inside. 4 minutes. No time. His hand hovered over the command line. Then the dockmaster's voice changed. Wait, they're releasing the rear sectors. On the monitor, interior bulkheads of the crippled liner slammed shut. Crew in those doomed sections had sealed themselves away, forcing atmosphere and transfer access to the forward compartments so more civilians could escape. A final message came through before the ship lost power. Take the children first. Jonas bowed his head for exactly 1 breath. Then he ordered the dock cut free. The Ark launched under a sky full of dying light. Every engine on the vessel ignited, joined by the sacrificial burn of escort fleets blazing themselves blind to shove salvation into motion. The hull trembled like a continent in an earthquake. Across the observation screens, the Frontier shone with evacuation fires, orbital debris, and the approaching wall of invisible death made visible only by what it erased. One world after another vanished from the feed, not exploding, just whitening. then gone. Inside the Ark, people screamed, prayed, held one another, or watched in silence so deep it felt sacred. Internal gravity failed in Ring 8, sending hundreds tumbling before emergency fields caught them. Cell collapsed at his station. Navarro kept issuing commands with blood running from one ear. Korvac lost an entire screen of his tactical display and laughed like a man finally meeting a worthy enemy. "Come on," he snarled at the stars. "We are not finished." The Ark cleared the corridor by less than 40 seconds. 40 seconds between survival and a tune with engines. Then the Gamma Front passed. Behind them, the Perseus Frontier burned clean. For a long time, nobody celebrated. Their victories too expensive for cheering. In the days that followed, the dead were counted badly because there were too many. Memorial rolls ran continuously through the habitat rings. Languages mingled in grief. Whole cultures learned in an afternoon that the songs only their grandmothers knew had died with the world. Children woke asking when they could go home, and adults lied until the lies became impossible. Jonas slept for 14 hours in medbay and woke to silence. Not external silence. Internal. He found Voss in an overlooked garden that had survived the emergency mass dump. The trees there were small and silver-leafed, artificial descendants of something extinct long before humans built rockets. She stood with a tablet of casualty revisions in her hand. "How bad?" he asked. She did not turn. "Better than the alternative." He waited. 92 million counting emergency overcapacity, she said at last. "We broke the official number." He blinked. "How?" People made room. Her voice trembled almost imperceptibly. Families doubling into quarter berths, crews sleeping in maintenance ducts, the Asha fasting to reduce life support draw, Krell demanding lower rations because, and I quote, "the hatchlings are noisy but preferably to starvation ghosts." Jonas almost smiled. 3 escort groups lost with all hands, Voss continued. Dock 12 rear sectors gone. Several intake stations cooked during launch. Cell may lose function in one arm. He nodded slowly. Voss finally turned. Alive. In custody. Her people are not eager to claim her now that the public knows what she did. Justice then, or some exhausted imitation of it. Jonas moved to the rail beside her. Below, the Ark's central valley stretched for kilometers under a simulated morning sky. Refugees crossed bridges. Children chased one another around ration queues because children always found a way to resume being children. New flags were not flying. That seemed right. "What happens now?" he asked. Voss looked out over the valley. "Now we build a civilization out of everyone who can still bear the word." He wanted that to sound noble. Instead, it sounded hard. Good, he thought. Hard things were usually real. Later that day, Cell asked to see him in the memory vault. The Cerivian sat beneath the golden sphere, left arm wrapped in conductive mesh, eyes dimmer than before. "The Ark has one final matter for the Arbiter," Cell said. "The Covenant persists until closure." The sphere lit. The Ark's calm voice filled the chamber. "Arbiter Jonas Vale. Continuation event successful. Final privileges granted. 1 Arist allocation may be restored from preserved reserve. Yes. 1 population block not embarked may be recovered by dispatch of autonomous seed flutes, cryogenic support, and fabrication cores if survivability remains above threshold. Estimated rescued lives between 200,000 and 1 million. His heartbeat quickened. A last chance. A world, perhaps. A city. A convoy. Why only 1? Because even mercy is bounded by matter. Jonas almost laughed at the cruelty of ancient wisdom, all presumed lost but with fragments of possibility. A mining million's deep shelter stacks, a drifting hospital cluster, a prison asteroid that had gone dark, Salvat, Teaching District 17, projected survivors, 300,000, the teacher and her class roster. Jonas stared at it. Cell watched him carefully. "You understand that once chosen, the others are forfeit." "Yes. You also understand that some options preserve greater technical value than others." There it was again, the old temptation. Useful lives, strategic lives, productive lives. Jonas looked through the candidates. The hospital cluster could save rare specialists. The mining stacks held heavy industry crews. The refugee flotilla had the highest raw population. The prison asteroid contained thousands no polity wanted back. And Salvat, a poor moon. Children, families, teachers, maintenance staff, no special prestige, no strategic command value. Just people. He thought of Quill, of Ganymede. Take the children first, Cell spoke softly. What is your judgment, Arbiter? Jonas looked up at the golden sphere. My judgment, he said, is that a civilization proves itself by who it cannot bear to abandon. He selected Salvat. The sphere pulsed once. Recorded. Jonas exhaled. Cell was silent for a long time. At last he asked, Do you believe that was the optimal choice? Jonas turned toward the dark rows of memory pillars. No, he said. I believe it was the human one. Weeks later, when the Ark had settled into its long exile route beyond the dead frontier, Jonas was asked to address the survivors. He almost refused. He was not a symbol by nature. He distrusted speeches, especially after mass graves. But Voss insisted, They don't need perfection, she told him. They need honesty. So he stood beneath the valley sky before representatives of 100 broken communities and said the only true thing he had left. We did not save enough. No one moved. We did not save enough, he repeated. Anyone who tells you otherwise is trying to comfort themselves with arithmetic. We carry millions because we lost hundreds of millions. We carry languages with missing words. Family trees cut at the trunk. We carry empty seats in our memory that no new child can replace. The crowd remained silent, listening with the stillness grief allows. But hear this too, Jonas said. The frontier did not end as a feeding frenzy. It did not end with the strong sealing the hatch and laughing at the weak through glass. In the final hours, warships shielded refugee lanes. Priests surrendered privilege. Howlers gave away profit. Strangers lifted strangers. Crew in a dying liner chose children they would never meet over their own breath. His voice nearly failed then, but he held it. That matters, not because it erases what we lost. It does not. It matters because when the sky came to kill us, we learned what kind of people we still wanted to be. Cerevian. Names of species that had once sounded like rivals and now sounded like passengers on the same wound. We were underestimated for a long time, he said quietly. Humans most of all. Seen as violent, stubborn, too emotional, too reckless, too soft, where it counted and too hard where it should not. Maybe some of that is true. But when the choice came, he said, our strength was not that we could kill for each other. Every empire can't do that. Our strength was that enough of us and enough of you beside us could still sacrifice for each other. Mercy way ahead more than fear, more than bloodline, more than rank. That is heavier than war. And because it is heavier, it endures. No applause followed. Only people rising, one by one, in every species' manner of respect. It was better than applause. Months later, in the quiet hours before simulated dawn, Jonas often walked the Arbiter-free decks alone. The hatred had not vanished. Some survivors blamed him and always would. Some names on memorial walls would haunt his sleep forever. Sometimes he stopped in front of them and whispered apologies to people who could not answer. But life, stubborn life, kept returning. Gardens expanded. Schools reopened. A Krell engineer married an Asha biologist in a ceremony that confused everyone and delighted children. The prison survivors from another rescue mission built the safest machine shop on the Ark because they were tired of being treated like disposable men. Salvor District 17 arrived at last by Seed Fleet convoy, battered but alive. The teacher who had sent the roster found Jonas in a corridor and simply embraced him until he forgot how to stand. That was all. No speech, no absolution. Just the weight of one human body saying thank you on behalf of those who had no words left. In the evening, Jonas stood again at the great viewing wall. Beyond it stretched the starless dark between destinations. Behind him, 92 million survivors breathed, argued, mourned, built, and dreamed, inside an ancient ark that had once asked whether they deserved to continue. He still did not know if they had passed. Not completely. Maybe that question was never meant to be answered once. Maybe every generation had to answer it again when the numbers turned cruel and the easy logic of selfishness offered itself as wisdom. The ark drifted on. So did humanity. Scarred, guilty, unfinished, alive enough to choose again. And somewhere far behind them, across the ashes of the frontier, the stars burned with the same indifferent light they had always held. But now, carried within one wandering vessel, was proof that even under that merciless sky, mankind had given the galaxy something rarer than conquest, a reason to keep each other alive. If you want more stories from the darkest edges of the galaxy, stay with Midnight Galaxy. There is always another human legend waiting in the void,